My name's Matt, and I will be talking with Diederik van Liere about simplifying system architecture, data modeling, and leadership challenges.
Hey, Diederik, good morning. I'm really happy to have you here.
The person with a lot of years of experience today. I really like your experience with the Shopify, and now you are the CTO for the Wealthsimple in Canada, which is pretty successful investment vehicle, I would say, that you have on your mobile phone. And I don't like the intros. I already said it to you. So if you don't mind, I have the first question. And you caught my attention when we recently talked about the questions and the topics to discuss. And we were talking about the architecture and simplification of it. So the microservices, I feel that we have having a bit of different trend now, and you have a bit of experience with that. So maybe you could tell about your experience and your journey here with the microservices, monolith, and how do you see it at the Wealthsimple?
Yeah, for sure. And thanks, Matt, for having me on your podcast. It's really, really awesome. I think this is, we as technologists, we sort of always are caught in our own hype cycles. And I think microservice architecture went through a similar hype cycle where this was like the obvious thing to do. Like if you were growing fast, then you should not have a monolithic code base, but you should split it up in microservices so you could go faster. I mean, that's sort of like the key, the core promise. But it sounds very easy to do, but it's actually very, very hard. And because the hard thing is that when you're growing really fast, it actually means that you don't quite yet know where your business is going. You don't have yet really good understanding of the products that you're building, that you're going to build. And so I think you really run the risk of like premature optimization, where you split it out too soon and then you actually get it wrong. And I think that's happening in the industry. And I think we got it a little bit wrong at times, right? And so in my other two companies I've worked at, both Wikipedia and at Shopify, we did have monolithic code bases, and you can make it work. It has its own challenges, but there's no fundamental inherent reason that those things will slow you down. You would have to make more investment in tooling and developer experience, but you can make it very effective way for developing. If you don't really understand where your business is and how it's going to evolve, you're going to most likely cut it up the wrong way. And so what you then often see happening is something like a distributed monolith, right? Like the idea is that each service is independent of each other. But in practice, if you get it wrong, they become highly coupled. And if you live in that world, it actually means you're going to struggle with shipping with confidence, troubleshooting, understanding the behavior. And so we went very quick from a monolithic code base to about 150 microservices. And actually didn't allow us to go faster. It actually slowed us down. So for the last 2 years, since I became CTO, I've been really beating the drum on simplifying. And I strongly believe that fewer components, fewer things make things simpler. So we have been consolidating and merging code bases into fewer services. We're not going to go back to a single monolithic code base. That's not the intention. But I think an order of magnitude fewer, so from 150 to about 15, it feels about the right number, approximately. It's not a hard number, and so we've been unshipping services, merging them, consolidating them. And within the first 12 to 15 months, we went from 150 to 120. And I don't think people believed it was actually possible, right? So we had to come up with rituals and ways in the culture to actually celebrate and encourage this kind of behavior. So one thing we did, we created an unshipped Slack channel where we celebrate people deleting stuff, small things, big things, and it's a very fun channel. And basically, what you do, you take a screenshot of your GitHub PR. The screenshot focuses on the number of lines added and lines removed. If the lines removed is bigger than the lines added, it's great. You add a single or 2-sentence description of what it is, And then we just celebrate. So it's an extraordinarily feel-good channel. Big unshipped are welcome, small ones are welcome. And I think that's sort of like just celebrating and recognizing this kind of work built momentum. And then after the momentum happened, people start seeing that it became easier in those areas to reason, to ship with confidence, right? So teams actually start really liking the benefits that they actually were experiencing from these more domain-aligned services. So that's where we are on the journey. We're not done, but we've made some really good head start here.
So today, what is the number of the microservices? Do you remember, maybe?
Yeah, I think it's about 120
You're coming.
that are related to the different products. It's probably a little bit more if you also include the internal services ones, but I exclude those. Those are fine. So for the products, the different products, it's about 120 right now.
Yeah, but definitely less. So I really like the idea because encouraging people like to simplify and to make the things that from the outside maybe looks impossible at the very beginning, right? That's a really cool idea with the like simple Slack channel. This could be even a thing.
You need a mechanism, right? You need good intentions, as Jeff Bezos said, won't get you there. You need a mechanism, and our mechanism was creating an unshipped channel. We also created emoji. It's the inverse rocket.
Cool. And Diederik, you work a lot with the data, like so you have like a strong background here. And we were recently talking about the anti-Patt patterns in the data products. So what like are the common anti-patterns? Do you see like in the data products how to avoid them? What would you tell the other leaders like where to put the emphasis?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would take a step back. I think they exist at different kinds of levels. But probably, I'm sorry, if I would start at like an architectural level, we have really lost, I think, the art of data modeling. This was a very popular thing to do in the 80s and 90s, and this also really dates me. But the art of data modeling is really about you have to take the raw data out of your operational databases and transform and clean and model that in a way that it actually maps to your business. And so, because of a whole bunch of technological innovations, we stopped doing that, right? Like we start basically modeling at query time, right? Like the transformation happens at query time, but there's no longer a source of truth around your metrics, or very, very rare. Very few companies have that. And so what happens then is that people we democratize access to data. Everybody can query basically everything in principle. But it is really people's own understanding, and which is probably too narrow of the data. So they come up with metrics that are probably incomplete or even misleading, because we don't put in the effort of building and maintaining a metrics layer, modeling the data. Like we don't. There's very few teams or companies that still use methodologies like from Kimball or Inman, right from the 80s and 90s. And so I think that is a massive, massive anti-pattern. And it's only going to get worse, because now, of course, we want to use the same data for all our generative AI applications. And everybody knows garbage in is garbage out. And but somehow we are not able or willing, or I don't know what it quite is, to put in the effort. It is not super sexy work. It is not visible work, right? It's also very hard, but it is so incredibly important is that you make your investments in modeling data. Clean, accessible data has never hurt you. The inverse has hurt you many, many times over. So that, I think, is probably the biggest anti-pattern.
And how about the organization structure for collaboration? I mean, do you have your own approach, like how to organize the team to support, better collaboration on decisions on the architecture, on the data? Like,
Yeah. So the way we run our data science teams, they're basically in verticals, which map the organization. So we have a marketing data science team, a finance data science team, an operations data science team. And so they mirror, or they are one-to-one paired with their functional counterpart. And these are long-lived teams. And the reason for that is few actually. Like one, it takes time to become a subject matter expert. But so if you want to do proper and good data modeling, you really need to understand that vertical very, very well. So people are basically trained in this particular vertical. Like, so as a marketing data scientist, it takes a while to become really, really good in on attribution and churn and LTV and CAC, right? That doesn't happen in one day. It takes a long time. So that's one. Two, we also really believe that you need to have trusting relationships between the data scientist and the business counterparts. That's another very important reason why these are long-lived teams. Right? So the subject matter expertise in building long-lasting relationships. And so they have a really good understanding of the problems the business is trying to solve, the questions they have. And so that's how we have done it. So I think other models are more like a shared service center where you just sort of like first in, first out, but then you don't get the benefits of specialization. You don't get the benefits of building long trusting relationships. So this has been a model that I think is working quite well. And it also gives you some sort of predictability. People don't have to worry that they have to compete with other teams. So the marketing group doesn't have to compete for data science resources with the finance group, because you get your own team. And so then if there's a prioritization challenge, it stays within your own vertical, right? Instead of like you have these cross interdependencies, like, oh my God, now I need to start arguing with another group. It doesn't exist. So vertical decoupled pillars that are long-lived has been, I think, a pretty effective strategy.
And recently we talked about the single vendor or single tool dependency, right? You were talking about why do you avoid committing to one tool or one vendor, and how do you approach it? Maybe you can elaborate on that too.
Yeah, I think that requires. It really depends on like the kind of how deep in your stack, right? Like, because there are benefits to like having a single vendor. Like, for example, at the lowest level, I think at your cloud provider, I think it will be insanely complex to run multi-cloud, right? Like, and I actually think it's often because of misunderstood concerns around resiliency and reliability. So I think you can solve that within a single cloud provider. But if you, for example, go more up in your stack and you have like other providers for it, for example, like we rely on different order execution brokers, then of course you want to have some kind of redundancy that in case one goes down, you still are able to function and can redirect your orders to another execution service. So I think you have to sort of really think about where in the stack, how deep are you, and how are you going to organize for resilience or in redundancy? So sometimes that can be done within a single vendor. Sometimes you will have to have multiple vendors. It's also always good to have multiple vendors. I mean, from a price leverage point of view, understanding the roadmap, like, but they also come cognitive cost associated with it all. So I think ultimately it's a risk appetite and ROI decision that you have to make.
And now is my favorite topic. I'm always asking my guests, and everybody likes to talk about it. AI. But I wanted to talk to you in a more pragmatic kind of way. So, what do you do what do you do? What kind of initiatives do you have, and how do you measure the impact? Do you measure the ROI? What is your approach?
I think we were from day one that ChatGPT came onto the market, like very excited about this as a new revolutionary technology. Like, I think it's going to be as big as the introduction of mobile, the introduction of the GUI back in the 60s. Like, I think it's a truly transformational technology, and we don't quite yet know how it's going to play out. But I think it can fundamentally redefine how we interact with machines. But that's my belief. But it's also very much day one, day two. Right? We're not nowhere near that yet. But I think you can sort of start seeing the outlines. So given that I think we realized from the get-go the potential of this technology, how then do you create an environment in which people can experiment and learn with some guardrails? And so the immediate guardrails that we thought of, like, okay, we want people to use ChatGPT and other models, but we also want to make sure that they don't accidentally share either IP with those third-party providers or PAI. So we created what we call LM Gateway. It's basically a proxy in between OpenAI and other ones, and it inspects prompts and makes sure that nothing that shouldn't be shared is shared. That was very, very successful. We open sourced it. It's available on GitHub under the Wealthsimple account. There's quite some forks and some contributors, which is really amazing because it's a general problem. We're not the only ones that face this challenge. But then as we did that, we also started to learn quite quickly that actually the most powerful use cases are actually the ones that leverage our own proprietary data. And so we were sort of like preventing that. So then the second step in our evolution was, okay, you have the gateway, but for these very powerful use cases, we are going to be running open source models on our own infrastructure. So we don't need to worry about people sending any data that they shouldn't, because everything stays within our own VPC. It's walled off. So that was step two. So people can internally use Llama, Mistral. It's hard to keep up because the models keep coming from, right? So that was the phase two. And phase three was then, okay, we have made the investments in the foundations, in the tooling. Now we have to start looking at really exciting use cases. So the first thing we did was, let's give all our engineers access to GitHub Copilot, because that seems like a pretty easy way to get people comfortable and experiment with it. And right now, the final step, the fourth step, is actually like we are in very specific areas introducing Gen AI in workflows. And so it's starting to being leveraged against our own infrastructure, using our own guardrails. So I think we have very good handle of that. One way I think we are managing the risk is by if you use it in your back office processes, then you don't need to provide an open prompt. And so you sort of really can significantly reduce the risk, because open prompts are, I think, the area where we are seeing the most challenges. Prompt injection attacks, potential of data leakage, cost contamination, all those challenges exist in that world. But if you actually keep it in your back office, you are actually able to see efficiency gains without sort of the risks. And I'm a kind of guy that loves to eat his cake and have to. And so you were asking also about what are the ROI. So actually the GitHub Copilot API comes with a lot of instrumentation. And so we have a pretty good understanding of how it's being used and how effective it is. So I think the last time I checked this data was only a few weeks ago, and about 30% of the suggestions offered by GitHub Copilot were accepted by our offers. So that's offers by engineers. That's good, right? That's a lot. And so if you then look at the impact on PR cycle time, for example, there's a market reduction. I think it was about 20% faster.
Cool.
So there is really good instrumentation where I actually do know the ROI. I mean, I mean, don't ask me for a dollar value right now because I don't have that, but I can definitely see it's helping. It's making us more efficient. On the back office side, we are still much in the build phase right now, so I don't yet have ROI figures for that, but I'm pretty convinced it's going to be meaningful.
Nice, but if I'm hearing 30%, 20%, this is definitely something, and you see the impact. Long term, it's a huge benefit. So it's not a 5% or 2%, right?
No.
It's a huge benefit. Huge benefit.
Yep.
Um, And because you have a lot of years of experience, for me, it's always interesting to see like what are your aha moments. Like, what was the hardest thing that you have done in your career? Because I think this has like a huge impact and shape you as a leader at work.
Everybody's journey is very idiosyncratic, is very unique to them. And so I don't know if my journey is a recipe at all, but maybe there's one or two principles that might be more broadly applicable, but it's hard for me to assess that. But what I can offer is that particularly like when you're a bit younger and you have fewer demands and responsibilities, it's really important to say yes to things that are very scary. And I did it multiple times. And right, like the very first time, not the very first time, but a big one was my decision to stay in Canada. I originally was going to be here for 2 years and go back to Holland. And I decided to stay here, even though there was very little in front of me to make me stay. Right, so that was a big decision. So I think that's an important one. Like say yes, raise your hand to opportunities that seem a little bit crazy. It's very important. It teaches you so much. It gives you grit and resilience. It might not always work out necessarily in how you expect it to work out. But that's not a bad thing either. Right? And so you're creating your own life journey by these kind of decisions. So I think that's very important. And be easy on yourself as well. Like when sometimes there's going to be setbacks, sometimes things don't work out, and that's also okay. It's really part of your journey. And sometimes we can be really harsh on ourselves. No, often we are the most harsh on ourselves, the biggest critics. So reflect and learn, but don't beat yourself unnecessarily over the head. I would say that's probably my second piece of advice.
Great thing. I think I had the similar ones, like to say yes when you are younger, and especially when you don't feel and you don't see the boundaries, because I feel the older you get, the more you see the kind of obstacles. And when you are young, you say like, hey, why not? Right? And it's
But
something.
you don't realize what you're getting yourself into, which is really an amazing feature, right? Like you don't fully understand what could go wrong. And there's naivety often that you should use to your advantage. For sure.
And how about now? Because like I feel like each year there's something new for us. You learn something new. And what are your pain points? What are your challenges? You know, what do you type in Google or Chat GPT to help you out? You know, with something.
I think you can always be more decisive. I think at least personally, like you're always trying to make the best decision possible, and you always think you need more data, you need more time. But on the biggest ones, biggest decision, you actually know what you need to do. It is about having faith and confidence that you're taking the right thing, and it's better to be decisive. And even if you get it wrong, or it doesn't work out as you hoped it would, be a fast course correction, right? Like it's not a mistake is not most mistakes are revertible in a way, right? So I think that's for me always. I keep learning and relearning that lesson to be more decisive. I think this probably for all of us is there's some truth in that.
Now, how about the current role as a CTO? What is the most stressful thing about it, and how do you manage it? How do you deal with that?
Making sure you keep your eyes on the right ball. There's so many balls, and making sure you track the right ones. And that is in a fast growing company like Wealthsimple, that is very hard because there's so many balls coming at you, and so you're sometimes overloaded with information from Slack. People want you, people need you for very good reasons, almost always. But in that sort of deluge of information, it's easy to actually get sidetracked of the really important things. So I think in any company that's growing very, very fast, there's just so many things on the go, so many opportunities, so many distractions, so many small fires, bigger problems. Making sure you keep the eye on the right balls at all the times is probably the biggest challenge.
And how about the managing the calendar? Because I'm like the longer I'm managing the company and I'm running the company as a co-founder, it's like managing the calendar to find a time slot for 3 people, and even more, it's impossible. I mean, like the people they have like packed calendar, and I assume in your case it's similar. Do you have your like kind of approach here?
Well, I'm fortunate to be helped with an executive assistant on this one, because exactly it is. Otherwise, I would be just spending half my day calendaring, which is not that needs to happen. But I'm in a very fortunate position to have a lot of support on that, and that's also a way to make sure I keep my eye on the right balls. But that's not, of course, available or applicable to most of us. And so, but I think it's really also here, I think AI is some of the really promising, like where you can sort of start delegating to an AI agent that does the calendaring and scheduling for you. There's some really interesting tools out there that do this for you already quite well. So then you have your AI EA. It's quite interesting.
This would be a next step, I think. So yeah, I agree.
Right.
And how about the recession? I mean, the last year in a tech, it was like a huge recession. This year, it's like bumpy road, I would say. The S&P 500 is getting up. I feel that we are on the right course, and I see that 2025 should be more optimistic especially for the tech and startups rising the capital. But how do you see it? Have you felt it? Did it change like something in the way you operate, and how do you want to operate in the future?
Yeah, I think 24 is really a transition year. I think it started really slow. Early this year, we were not really growing, but that sort of started to change a little bit mid-year, and we started to hire again a little bit, but also very much not forgetting the hard-learned lessons from the 2020, 2021, right? Like when money was very cheap, and we all went a little bit crazy in hiring. So I think we have learned our lessons. There needs to be a very good business reason, business case. You be mindful. It's also very important to pay attention to onboarding. I mean, people part of your culture and getting them up to speed, like those kind of things. We also sometimes forgot a little bit to do back in those days. So I think we are a lot more mindful and deliberate in our hiring, but there is definitely some growth happening, and I do expect that to carry on in next year. At the same time, also it seems though that the world is getting increasingly volatile and unpredictable, and so I don't think we are overcommitting. We are just really like keeping a close eye and sort of like decide on a monthly cadence what is responsible, what do we need. So some growth, but with the eyes wide open.
We are running out of time, and my last question is that I asked all of my guests, any books or conferences, podcast resources that have been, particularly influential for yourself, and you remember this aha moment, I don't know, after reading it or listening to it.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, unfortunately, I don't have so much time to read books anymore these days. But I think some books that really stuck with me. But this was when I was a teenager. I read quite ferociously. But Out of Control by Kevin Kelly was an incredible book about how much we can learn from biological systems and how we engineer our own systems. and the art of Zen and the art of motorcycle maintenance was an incredible book that I about the value in the practice of being mindful. So those are two books that have been a long time ago, but they are very mean a lot to me.
Awesome. Diederik, thank you so much for today, for all those insights. I really appreciate it. Wish you luck in the future.
Thank you, Matt, for having me, and looking forward to the outcome of this podcast.
Follow Matt and Leszek on LinkedIn.